Hi friends, welcome back to Learning Space. So this is UPSC IAS Prelims 2019 revision module pertaining to art and culture, and we are in the 31st module of current affairs. So this issue of art and culture, we are going to see a number of issues starting from the 500th death anniversary of Saint Kabir. So why is this important? Yes, just because of the fact the Prime Minister offered floral tributes to Saint Kabir, and he himself acknowledged the fact that Saint Kabir represents the essence of India's soul. Now, why should he make such a statement? Understand, the main philosophies that is going behind Saint Kabir is that he actually stood for the unity between Hindus and the Muslims. He also was strongly against caste system. He was strongly against the priestly classes. So many of these things they actually stood for. You can very well say that Saint Kabir stood for the unity amongst the diverse elements which is present in India. So that is why Prime Minister made such a statement that he represents the essence of India's soul. So by this he actually commemorated the occasion of 500th death anniversary of the great saint and poet Kabir. He unveiled a plaque also to mark the foundation stone of Sant Kabir Academy. Now Sant, it actually means, the word means he is a mystic saint. Now this particular information is quite important. Kabir Panth is actually a religious community which follows the teachings of Saint Kabir, and it is said that Kabir Panth is actually one of the Sant Mat of India. What is the Sant Mat? Sant Mat is basically a spiritual movement that gained good importance in the Indian subcontinent around the time period of 13th century, and this literally means teachings of the saint. So that is why we call the Kabir Panth movement to be one of the Sant Mat. So now let us understand about the teachings and the philosophies which was expounded by Saint Kabir. So as I have told you, he was a very prominent poet of the Bhakti movement, and with regard to his teachings are in the form of couplets. So couplets, these couplets are known by dohas, and some of these dohas are also present in the Sikh holy book, which is the Adi Granth. Now what is very crucial is, we have already discussed about Kabir Panth movement and its members who are called as Kabir Panthis, and the importance of Saint Kabir lies in the fact that he questioned the dogmas and the rituals which was present in both Islam and the Brahmanical form of Hinduism. So he actually ridiculed all forms of external worship of both the Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam. He questioned the preeminence of the priestly classes, and he was also strongly against caste system. So it is also considered that he was actually a disciple of Guru Ramananda. So these are some of the important points when it comes to Saint Kabir. If a question comes with regard to the short notes of Saint Kabir, what are his philosophies, what are his teachings, you can very well pick up some of the points which was given in this particular slide. The next issue that we are moving is to this particular event wherein the Indian president, he himself visited two countries. He visited Vietnam and Australia. Now what happened in Vietnam is that he visited a Hindu temple which is called as My Sun Temple Complex. So this is actually a culmination, a group of certain Hindu temples. So that is why we are now going to learn more about My Sun Temple Complex. President of India, on his recent visit to Vietnam, he visited the My Sun Temple Complex, where the oldest temples have been dated to around 4th century. Now what is very crucial is that India has another link with the case of My Sun Temple Complex. Here, Archaeological Survey of India is actually undertaking restoration of some of the broken and the semi-ruined temples of My Sun Temple Complex. So this is another link that India has with regard to this temple which is present in Vietnam. So let us now understand more about this particular temple. As I have told you, this is actually a cluster of some partially ruined Hindu temples. So this is a Hindu temple and it is going to comprise of some significant Hindu deities like Krishna, Vishnu, and very importantly you have Lord Shiva in the form of Bhadreshwara. Now this was constructed by the kings of Champa between the time periods of 4th and 14th century AD. This was recognized by the UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. This Might Sun Temple complex is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now the temples have got a great variety of architectural designs that symbolizes the greatness and the purity of Mount Meru. What is this Mount Meru all about? So Mount Meru, as per the Hindu mythological stories, it is said that this is a sacred mountain home of Hindu gods. The temples are constructed in fired brick with stone pillars and it is also decorated with some sandstone relief works. So this is it about Might Sun Temple complex. The next issue that we are moving on is again related to Vietnam. So what happened here is India and Vietnam postal departments, they signed an MOU. So what is this MOU all about? They are going to have the theme of ancient architecture which is going to link the countries of India and Vietnam. So what recently happened was this MOU, this agreement has got the final approval from the side of cabinet as well. Now the background of this whole event, the postal department of Vietnam and India, they have signed an agreement in December 2017 so as to issue a joint stamp between India and Vietnam. Now the theme of this joint stamp is going to be ancient architecture. So they have to depict some sort of ancient architectural examples in that particular stamp. So what is that architectural example which both the countries have picked up? That is very crucial. The case with India is that we have picked up Sanchi Stupa, and in the case of Vietnam, they have picked up one of the significant architectural entity which is present in Vietnam, which is known as Pho Minh Pagoda. So Sanchi Stupa on one hand, we have a pagoda on another hand. So we are now going to recognize and learn more about these two individual entities, starting with the one in India which is known as Sanchi Stupa. Now a quick history behind Sanchi Stupa. As you all know, this is a stupa which is housing certain Buddhist relics. So Sanchi is very famous when it comes to, as it is being the most perfect and a well preserved stupa. The foundation of this great establishment that was laid by King Ashoka, because he is the one who actually erected a monolithic pillar and he is the one who laid the foundation stone with regard to the construction of Sanchi Stupa. Later on, some other kingdoms, some other dynasties too have played an equal part with regard to the construction of the Sanchi Stupa. Like you have the Shungas. It was enlarged to twice its original size because of the works that has been undertaken by the Shunga dynasty. Again, towards the end of the 1st century BC, under the Satavahanas, they constructed this sort of beautiful gateways on the 4 cardinal points. So you have this sort of gateways which is known as Toranas. So this gateway has been contributed by the Satavahana kingdom, and not just the Satavahanas, even the Guptas, they do have a significant role with the construction of the Sanchi Stupa. Now, to have more information about the Sanchi Stupa, please refer to module 14 of the Indian architecture. You will get to know not just about Sanchi Stupa, but also about other stupas like Amaravati, Nagarjunakonda and so on. So please refer this particular module for additional information about stupa with regard to Indian architecture. Now, this particular diagram suggests some general characteristics, some general structure which is present in the case of any given stupa. So as seen in the figure, the main parts of the stupa are, you have an anda, a harmika, a chatri, you have pradikshna-pata, medhi, vedika, and finally you have torana. All those parts are given here. Now each and every component which is given in the stupa has a philosophical significance also. Take for example the anda component. The anda is actually said to be a dome which encloses the entire earth. So this is considered to be that dome of heaven which actually encloses the earth. And on top of it, you can actually see a squared railing, right? So this squared railing, it actually signifies the world's largest mountain, the world mountains. And after that, if you observe closely this particular diagram, you can also see a mast or a pole. So this pole, it actually signifies cosmic axis. And finally, on top of this cosmic axis, you have a chhatri. So this chhatri is actually something like a square again, a parallel squares of umbrellas. So this kind of umbrellas that you have at the very top, that is actually referred to as chhatri, and this again refers to the Devalokas which is present in the universe. So like this, each and every component with regard to your stupa has got a significance. Like Pradikshina is wherein the normal people, the normal human beings, they actually undertake the normal circumambulatory path to worship Lord Buddha. So these are some of the important significance when it comes to the stupa. Now let us understand more with regard to Sanchi Stupa. In Sanchi Stupa particularly, you have some various events of Buddha's life and jatakas getting depicted on the structure of the stupa, especially over the railings and the Torana gateways. Now if you move on to the next important structure, we have Pho Minh Pagoda of Vietnam. So this is a pagoda. It was built originally during the Lai dynasty and later on it got expanded during the Tran dynasty. So just two dynasties you've got to remember. It was a place for high ranking mandarins and the aristocratic people of the Tran royal court to worship. And now let us take a closer look about what is the general difference between a stupa and a pagoda. So actually you can very well say that a pagoda is actually an evolution of the stupa in the parts of your eastern parts of Asia. So this actually originated from your stupa only. In general, however, stupa is the term used for a Buddhic structure which houses the relics of Buddha. And while pagoda is actually present, it is again a sacred building which is present in the eastern Asia and it is mostly used for secular purposes. Now stupa will be mostly in the form of a hemispherical dome, whereas if you take a pagoda, this will have multiple disc-like features. It has multiple disc-like feature, and unlike your stupa, it has some several levels all along its interior space. So this is how a stupa is organically different from a pagoda. And then we are moving on to the next important issue. We have the World Capital of Architecture. Recently, UNESCO had come up the first of this kind of title, that is, it is declaring it for the very first time that Rio de Janeiro will be henceforth be the world's capital for architecture. So this is another significant event. The UNESCO has actually recognized Rio de Janeiro as the world capital for architecture. So this is the first time that this heritage body has come up with such a sort of distinction. So it is a new initiative on the part of UNESCO along with the International Union of Architects. This is considered to be a non-governmental agency. Not just that, not just being given the title of World Capital of Architecture, Rio de Janeiro has got another credit to its cap. What is that? Now this was actually selected to host the 27th edition of the World Congress of International Union of Architects. So this was going to be held in July 2020, that is going to be the 27th edition, and beating Melbourne, beating Paris, Rio has won this particular distinction to host this event. And what is the theme of this particular 2020 edition? The theme is All the Worlds, Just One World. And this is also going to promote the internationally agreed 2030 agenda for SDG, that is the 11th goal, making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. So just picking upon one place representing the world capital of architecture, it is again going to promote your 11th goal of SDG. And why was it in news? As we have just now mentioned, it was there in news because Rio has been chosen for the world capital of architecture. What is so significant about this event? Now, because of this particular reason, it is going to become the fulcrum, the epicenter with regard to the debates about pressing global challenges, like from the perspectives of culture, cultural heritage, urban planning and architecture. The crux is that you have to connect culture with architecture to have a sustainable city wherein architecture, some culturally oriented preserved monuments can coexist with the budding human life. So, you need to have a coexistence between architecture and culture. Connecting culture and architecture is very much essential to have inclusive, productive and sustainable cities. So, this is how this whole event of declaring one city as the world capital of architecture will have the whole world to focus upon this particular connection of culture with architecture. So, let us move on to the next important issue. We have Ambubachi Mela. So, what is this Ambubachi Mela? So, this is it about a 4-day annual fair which was held at the Kamakya temple in Guwahati of Assam. What about this fair? What is so special about this fair? The speciality or the uniqueness with this fair is that it is celebrated to mark the annual menstruation of the goddess at the Kamakya temple. So, Kamakya Devi is actually worshipped and she is celebrated for the womanhood. She is celebrated for menstruation of women. So, this fair takes place in June every year. It is an annual fair and it was held in the year of 2018 between 22nd June to 26th June. So, significance of the fair, as I have told you, it is considered as an auspicious period when women, they pray for the fertility and they celebrate childbearing capabilities of women. It also marks an occasion to promote awareness about menstrual hygiene with regard to women. Now, one another closely related event was the Thuloni Biya ritual. So, this literally means the small wedding and it actually celebrates the attainment of womanhood amongst the girls in Assam. So, the irony of this whole thing is that on one end, when you have women being subjected to inhuman sexual harassment, on the other side you have the women being celebrated, their menstruation is celebrated, the entire womanhood is being celebrated. So, this is the irony that is existing in India. The crucial point to be noted is that the culture in India is actually good. It is how we interpret the culture that is making the entire difference. That is actually the sole problem with regard to the Indian society as of now. And now moving on to the Kamakya temple. So, the Kamakya temple in Guwahati, it is situated on the Neelanchal hills and it is considered to be one of the Shakti Peeths. What is this Shakti Peeth all about? Now, here you have to go back to the Hindu mythological stories. It is said that deity Sati's body has been split, it has been torn and it fell on certain parts of the earth. And all those parts has been venerated as a Shakti Peeth. And it is said that in this place of Kamakya temple, Sati's womb and genitals fell. So, that is why it is being very much venerated, it is celebrated for the womanhood in general. And Kamakya Devi, the reigning deity, is also worshipped as goddess of fertility. Very crucially, this place is also known for its tantric rituals. So, not just Shaktiism, tantric practices are also very much common with regard to Guwahati's temple. And now moving on to the next issue, we have Paga Hornbill Festival. So, PPHF. What is this festival all about? Understand, this is a conservation festival. This is a conservation festival. The state of Arunachal Pradesh hosts only one such conservation festival, and this is about the conservation of hornbills. And this hornbills is actually taking a refuge in your Pakke Tiger Reserve. So, within the Tiger Reserve, the Nishi tribes, they are trying to conserve this particular hornbill. Three things I mentioned to you in this statement. One is you have the Nishi tribes which is trying to conserve the hornbill. The hornbills are very much important with regard to UPSC. The third point is Pakke Tiger Reserve. So, 3 points are very crucial when you talk about Pakke Paga Hornbill Festival. So, as a part of this festival, visitors are treated to cultural programs, some food stalls, screening of short films, etc. takes place. It has also helped in creating awareness about natural conservation. And Pakke Tiger Reserve, remember it is a tiger reserve, but it is also home to 4 species of hornbills, and the 4 species are given here. And what are its objectives? The objectives are quite interesting. First of all, this is done so as to recognize the role which is played by the resident Nishi tribes in conserving the hornbill. So, first point is the importance of the role that is being played by the Nishi tribes. Second important point is these tribes and the people who are residing there, their sole livelihood is based upon hunting and logging. Now, when you actually develop this kind of a tourism festival, this kind of a conservation festival, what happens? Tourism in general around that particular area will improve. This will lead to an increased focus upon this particular Arunachal Pradesh region. This will lead to an alternate source of livelihood with regard to this particular locality. So, that is the second aim. The third important thing is to tell the rest of the country about the wonders of the Pakke Tiger Reserve and its surrounding areas. So, 3 things are said to be the objectives behind conducting the Pakke Paga Hornbill Festival. And the next important issue that we are taking up is Statue of Equality. So, there has been much talk about Statue of Unity, which is Vallabhbhai Patel's statue. But what about this Statue of Equality? Yes, you have one such statue that is coming up, which is a 216 foot tall statue of Sri Ramanujacharya, which is soon to be unveiled in Hyderabad. So, this particular statue is called as the Statue of Equality. And what is so unique about this statue? Please understand, this will become world's second tallest statue in a seated position. The very first position has been won by the great Buddha of Thailand. So, this statue, after this, your second tallest seated position statue would be that of Sri Ramanujacharya. So, now let us try to understand more about the philosophies expounded by Ramanujacharya. So, Ramanujacharya, or otherwise known as Ilaya Perumal, is a South Indian Brahmin who stood for the values that has been expounded, which is known as Vishishtadvaita. So, he is a philosopher, a bhakti saint, an influential thinker of Hinduism. So, why do we call him to be an influential thinker of Hinduism? That is because along with the Dvaita philosophy of Madhavacharya, along with Advaita philosophy of Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya's Vishishtadvaita could be said to be the 3 most important pillars when it comes to Vedantic philosophy. So, that is why they have mentioned this line. He is said to have influenced Hinduism, the growth of Hinduism in general. Also, interestingly, he can be said to have laid the foundations of Vaishnavism. The philosophy and the teachings of Ramanuja also laid the foundation of Vaishnavism school. And he was a bhakti saint, spread the message of equality. His philosophy came to be known as Vishishtadvaita, or qualified non-dualism, or qualified monism. Both are the same. What is this philosophy all about? We have already dealt it, but I am reiterating the same points again. Now, what does this philosophy mean is that it is talking about Vishishtadvaita. Ramanujacharya closely followed Shankaracharya, and he said, I am accepting whatever views that has been put out by Shankaracharya, but I am giving in a very small difference. While Shankaracharya said that his God is said to be in a nirguna form, that is without any attribute, whereas Ramanujacharya said, my God is having certain attribute, that is in the saguna format. That is why it is said that he laid the foundation with regard to Vaishnavism. He began to formalize the structure of God. So, he began in saguna form of worship, whereas Shankaracharya believed in nirguna form of worship. There is a small difference between Vishishtadvaita and Advaita. His philosophical foundation for devotionalism was very much influencing the Bhakti movement during those times. He also wrote some influential texts. So, you have certain commentaries, certain bhashyas, which is again meaning commentaries on certain book. Like for example, he wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita, he wrote a commentary on Brahma Sutras, and so on. So, please keep a short note about that as well. And now let us move on to the next important issue, animal sports in India. So, yes, starting from Kambala. So Kambala is an annual buffalo race. Please do not confuse Kambala with Jallikattu. Kambala is actually an annual buffalo race which is a tradition in the Karnataka's Dakshina Kannada region and in the Udupi. So this region is totally called as Tulunadu, and the festival is actually again an annual festival, starts in the month of November and lasts till March. Now what is very important is the area where this sport is actually getting played. It is actually a very slushy area. They prepare the track in such a way that it is very much slushy, filled with water, and this is actually ploughed into a muddy field. So this is the field preparation that usually takes place with regard to the Kambala event, and this is an age-old festival. It is said that it is almost around 800 years old, and most importantly, this festival is dedicated to Kadri's Lord Manchunatha. Manchunatha is again an incarnation of Lord Shiva, and it is believed that this celebration could please the god and thereby lead to a good harvest. And now let us understand about the Jallikattu and let us compare that with Kambala here. So what is this event of Jallikattu all about? So Jallikattu, as I have told you, it is a bull taming sport, whereas this one Kambala is actually a racing event. So this bull taming sport usually takes place on the Mattu Pongal day. So the people of Tamil Nadu, they worship cattle wealth, and this is what the whole thing is about with regard to the Mattu Pongal day. And the word Jallikattu, it is actually derived from two Tamil words. One is called as Jalli, Jalli meaning coins, and Kattu is meaning to tie it around something. So Jallikattu is actually derived from two words, Jalli and Kattu, which means some silver and gold coins are actually tied to the horns of the bulls as the prize money. So this is it about Jallikattu, the basic of it. Now let us try to understand about the origins of Jallikattu. So bull sport was very common amongst the ancient tribes who lived in Mullai geographical landscape. So in the Sangam landscape, we have actually dealt about some 5 landscape, and this Mullai is about the forested regions of the Sangam landscape. Now it became an opportunity for men to display their bravery, and the prize money was introduced for entertainment, and also it was called by some other names as well, like Eru Thaluvudal. So this is Eru Thaluvudal. Please remember the other name of the event as well, wherein you have to hug the bull as a rite of passage for a man to seek a girl's hand. So in order to get married to a girl, you need to show your bravery. The men folk have to show their bravery, and it is said that in the ancient mythology, it is said that Eru Thaluvudal is one such event where men get to show their bravery, and by means of it, you get the girl's hand. So this is the origin, the basic origin story with regard to Jallikattu. And the same goes with Kambala. We just learnt that it is an 800-year-old festival and it is celebrated to appease the gods and so on. Now, dangers faced by participant, yes, there are some apparent dangers with both the events. For example, over 200 people have died during the sport over the past 2 decades. The same goes with Kambala as well. Accidents do occur sometimes during the Kambala races. The buffaloes may skid or they topple onto the farmers who may get hurt eventually. And next on, we are moving on to the rules of the game. So here interestingly, you have to remember 3 names like Vatti Manju Virattu, you have Velli Virattu and Vadam Manju Virattu. So the question may be in this format that all these words are related to which sporting event in India. So when this kind of a question comes up, it is quite important that you at least remember the names of this kind of sporting event. In Vatti Manju Virattu, what happens is participants attempt to hold on to the bulls for a specific amount of time or a distance. In Velli Virattu, bulls are released into an open ground and competitors try to control the same. And in Vadam Manju Virattu, they are tried to along Vadam meaning a rope, and a team of players try to control them. And with regard to Kambala, we have already learnt of how a track would be ploughed using some muddy water, and they are normally about 120 to 160 meters long, and 2 pairs of buffaloes tied to the ploughs. They are guided by the racers. Now comes the crucial point. When they guide, they actually torment the animals, and the racers, they beat the animals with a stick so as to make them run faster. So this is why both the events, both the Kambala and the Jallikattu events have been always in controversy with regard to the animal rights activist. And now moving on to the other animal sports in India, a quick glance about certain important animal sports, starting with cockfight. So a cockfight is actually a blood sport between two roosters or cocks, and here what happens is sometimes around the legs of the concerned cock a metal knife is usually tied. So this happens sometime. While not all cockfights lead to death, the cocks will endure a significant physical trauma. And cockfights are especially popular in Andhra Pradesh during the festival of Sankranti. Now when you talk about regional variations, it is called by different names in different parts of the country. For example, it is called as Kodi Pandalu in Telugu, it is called as Korikatta in Tulu and Sevalpur in Tamil. So these are some of the different names with regard to cockfight. And then we are moving on to Bail Gadi Chariot. So this is an event, a sporting event that happens in rural Maharashtra. So this is actually a bullock cart race that have been a long source of entertainment amongst the rural Maharashtrians. And what is important is, this is not just a sporting event, this has been taken as a status symbol. To organize such a race event is considered to be a status symbol with regard to the Maharashtrian people. Now these events also accompany some of the important festivals like the Ganapati festival and the annual village festivals, which is called as Jatra. And organizing the race, please understand, it is more of a status symbol for the organizers. And regional variations also you have, because apart from Maharashtra, Punjab and also in the states of Andhra, Chhattisgarh, etc., you have this form of a bullock cart race. And now moving on to camel race. So when we talk about camel race, what should immediately come to your mind is the Pushkar Camel Festival. So horse and camel race take place during the Pushkar fair, and it attracts a major crowd from all along India. The camels are trained to take part in the race, and not just the race, you also have a beauty contest when it comes to the camels. So these are something that takes place with regard to the Pushkar fair camel race. And then we are moving on to dog fight. So dog fight is again a type of blood sport. Blood sport because here there can be a killing with regard to the other animal. One animal may eventually die in this kind of a process. This is again a type of blood sport with two game dogs against one another, and what is happening here is the animals, they are kept in cages without food, thereby angering and maddening them. So when they are let out to fight against each other, what happens is one dog may eventually kill another, and betting is actually very much taking place with this kind of dog fight as well. Bets of lakhs of rupees are placed upon the winning dog. So what is very crucial with regard to this kind of dog fight is that it is actually nowadays become a pastime with regard to the urban rich, the urban spaces of Punjab and Haryana, especially it has become a pastime of the activity of the rich people. So please remember this particular small news as well. And now moving on to Bulbul fight. So Bulbul fight, this is actually an annual event which takes place in Assam's harvest festival of Bihu. So again this has been in the controversy and this has been in the news because of the animal rights activists who actually say that it is harming the bulbul birds. People of the surrounding villages, they catch the bulbul, they train them, and thereby they give it to the kind of bulbul fight. The birds sustain injuries during the fight, and the losers are let off after trimming the crest, and they are not allowed to participate in that contest again. The bulbul fight is a part of the religious traditions of some of the temple in this particular region. And finally, we have horse racing. Now, what is very crucial with regard to horse racing is that this has been a legal and a heavily regulated industry with regard to India. So, India has got many classic races like for example, the Bangalore Derby. So, this is all some of the regulated sporting events, and horse races is an equestrian performance, meaning it is taking place with the help of horses. And horse racing is being practiced like around the world. The first horse race in our country was actually set up in Madras in 1777. So, what is the irony behind the whole event of animal sports in India is that there is a double standard. A double standard that has been taken by animal activists, judiciary and the government, what they do is they try to legalize one sport, but they try to prevent another sport from taking place. Though eventually all this lead to some form of animal harming, but they try to legalize one sport, whereas they try to prevent some other sport. So this is the irony, a double standard which has been taken not just by the animal activist but also by the government. And in concluding remarks, you can write these particular points. Many of the sports which we have discussed above could not be technically called as sport. Why is it so? That is because it has not been registered under the respective state sports councils. Also, many of them take place illegally. There is a lot of harming of the animals. There is a lot of betting events that is going on. Because of this, all of them, or you can say most of them, take place illegally. In totality, it damages the animal's psyche, because thereby you have some sort of castration of the animals, mutilation of animals, physical harm of the animals, not providing them proper food. You tend to harm the animal, because of which we call that these kind of animal sports, they damage the psyche of the animal. The Indian Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act that requests the people who are responsible for animals to take all reasonable measures to ensure their well-being. So this you can write it in the form of a concluding remarks. So that is it for today. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.